Welcome to SNN BBC Podcast Edition, and I'm your host, Nandan. Today, we have two esteemed guests with us, Sami with a PhD in camera lens spectrography and a minor in internet security.
Good evening, everybody.
And Nathan Rahman, who has a PhD in modern Orwellian societies with a minor in crowd scanning.
Hello.
Today, we're going to be investigating a fascinating topic on the surveillance of the internet and how it relates to George Orwell's 1984. So, let's get each of your individual thoughts on what surveillance means to you.
Well, my first beliefs regarding surveillance are that it's a positive. I think it's a great way to keep people safe, a great way to keep people under control, and a great way to manage a nation, especially in these turbulent times.
Although safety and national security is important for our nation, surveillance, if within the wrong hands, it can cause an abuse of power within the government and companies, but also it can lead to a lack of privacy and reduce public trust within the government or other companies, like within the people who use those companies. There's also a lack of expression where people can't express what they want to say or say what they want to say because they're under surveillance. But also, there's an inherent discrimination and racism present in surveillance technology where they can use race to kind of make judgments.
Alrighty, that segues us into our next topic, discussing the government versus no government's control in internet surveillance. Sami, would you like to talk first?
Nathan over here was talking about how surveillance will lead to more discrimination based on people's race or ethnicity or sexual orientation. However, I think surveillance could actually improve these people's lives because public health, especially to minorities, is very insufficient, as we've seen with the higher mortality rates in black pregnant women compared to white women, etc., in other hospitals. But one way, by keeping information public and available to everybody, we can further improve our scientific understanding of the body. And this can only happen if people are willing to allow their information to be harvested. And this is according to the Brennan Center as well. So this is a very good idea. Additionally, crime prevention. Many people, when they freely express themselves, they're not expressing themselves in a way I think is positive for society or a way anybody thinks is positive for society. And by making sure that we can keep threats under a minimum, a lot of people who are willing to do bad things usually make threats about it,
Hold on, let me stop you there. I have a question. So you're saying that when we limit people's expression using surveillance cameras, that's going to be a good thing and not go against our constitutional rights?
Well, I'm saying you still have the right to say what you want, but people should understand that that right comes with a hook, you know what I mean? It's like you can't be in a movie theater and scream fire, it's you're endangering everybody, a stampede could happen, someone could die. And that's what I'm saying is the same thing should be about the internet, the government should be able to listen, and that's going to allow us to keep the nation more safe.
But wait, how can the government ensure that they will give us proper safety or proper surveillance when the surveillance system itself is flawed? For example, let me paint the picture of 19-year-old Jelani Walker, who was arrested for attempted murder. And the reason why this person was arrested is because of prosecutors thought his likes and posts on social media proved that he was a member of a violent gang. So you can see here that surveillance isn't necessarily correct or it's not concrete proof that someone is a bad person because of what they do online or what actions they have online. It's not concrete proof in the sense that we can't make a solid decision based off of that.
Well, we're not necessarily trying to use surveillance for concrete proof. Surveillance.
So then, if you can't do that, then how can you do anything? If you can't make a concrete proof, you can't make decisions with surveillance. Then what's the point of surveillance if it can't be used to actually help or benefit?
It can be used to assist. Yeah. It can be used to assist decisions. You mentioned Javante Williams and how he was associated with gang violence because of his likes and posts. You can't deny that there is, despite the fact that he himself didn't commit any gang violence, there's still an association between him and gang violence now, and that's something he chose to do.
You can't say that though. Liking a post is different from actually being part of a gang, and surveillance can't tell you that. Surveillance can only go so far, and you can't use it to actually impact something. And this goes to the point with public trust with the government. How can you trust the government if you know for a fact that the government is spying on you and they're making decisions that are not correct, or they're making rash decisions or incorrect decisions? And that was directly from the Harvard Law Review, where they said that this dynamic of power is changing all the time between the government and the citizens, where the government has this kind of overarching power over the citizens, and that could lead to blackmail or or like an increased power disparity to the point where it's unfair or it's not even safe. And if we extend that on to George Orwell's 1984, we can see the same thing, how the totalitarian regime uses surveillance to kind of enforce conformity and like suppress or trying to remove all the forms of dissent. And it shows how surveillance can be used in the same way, where all forms of dissent or all forms of like disagreement are suppressed by surveillance. And that's the same with like the use of like kind of making decisions based off of likes and the things on social media, because they're trying to get in your thoughts or trying to make they're trying to prevent like opposing thoughts from being formed.
Well, they're not trying to prevent opposing thoughts. I'd say it's
they're trying to make everyone conform to the same ideas. Because if someone's trying to deviate from society in the sense where they want to, I don't know, join a gang or all that,
that's bad. That should be caught.
The thing is, their thoughts are being suppressed to the point where they have to conform to one specific social dynamic, just like how they do in 1984.
I would say
where everyone in society is like forced in one way.
Suppressing someone's thoughts to stopping them from joining a gang, for instance, I think that's actually a positive of internet surveillance. And like for most citizens, if you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to fear. And I think that's something that could go all around. If you are an innocent civilian and you haven't committed any crimes, you're not affiliated with gang violence. You don't, because we're not forcing people to make decisions.
But the thing is, that's just the first step. Imagine, as this goes on and on, the government gains more and more power to the point where they're trying to enforce everybody, even if you're not trying to do something violent or something like dangerous inherently. Just doing something different or trying to deviate from American society will get your opinion suppressed or ideas like kind of marginalized.
Well, can you please explain to me what do you mean by get your ideas marginalized? How is the government doing that through surveillance?
What I mean by that is, like, think of the example of thought crime, in the sense that all ideas that are dissenting or different or that go against what the government wants you to believe is kind of suppressed to the point where it can't even exist. And now, since governments have our detailed personal data, they can use this data they can either blackmail us or have other forms of coercion to manipulate us and control us even further to the point where all forms of individuality are suppressed.
What if we bring this conversation towards more companies and individual control over internet surveillance? Instead of just governments who are large and have access to all like cameras and monitoring, what if we talk about companies who are like smaller and the individual in their role in internet surveillance?
All right. So nowadays, I feel like companies, they still, even though they might not be government, they might not have the level of surveillance that governments have. Companies still do have a large level of surveillance over their customers. For example, Netflix, they can see every video or movie that you've ever watched. And Amazon can see that everything you've purchased, everything you looked at, every link you've clicked on. So in every like customer service thing you've ever like sent. So the thing is, even though they might not have this same level of surveillance as the government, they still have a really, really, really deep level of understanding over you as a customer.
What I would say is that, like, look, for example, on Google's privacy and terms, you can find we collect information to provide better services to all our users. And at the end of that first paragraph, you can find the information Google collects and how that information is used depends on how you use our services and how you manage your privacy controls. And so it's not necessarily
that it doesn't necessarily depend on, but it mainly depends on the company that's using it. For example, Facebook, they don't care what they do about your data because they would sell it to anybody. And
yeah, but the thing is, you choose to do Facebook.
What?
No one, Facebook isn't forcing you to download the app.
Yeah, and same for Google.
You're not forced to use it, but when they track you, that's like, the app is free, isn't it? Like, how else are they supposed to fund the company? How else is the company supposed to keep afloat without using your information? Also, the information helps you, like personalized ads, don't you want to buy things that are suited for you?
Why? Why would you want them to have your data to personalized ads? Or did you ask them to do that, or did they do that for you?
They do that
they do that for you. Why do you want personalized ads? It's a company, they kind of going against your own will. They kind of put it in some tiny text in a 90-page document that you're supposed to read. How can they do that? That's just unfair at that point. And that just goes into the privacy concerns that these companies have. They have like a 90-page document saying, in some tiny dark text saying, "Oh yeah, you can sell all your data to me." How can that be like fair for like most users?
I think it's fair because the app's free. Like that's the way the companies manage. It's either, if this is such an essential service that people have to use it and everything, and the only way to fund it that's plausible would be to have targeted ad campaigns, or if you really want to go so far as to say that the government should take control of Google, take control of the internet in order to make it more accessible and less serve it.
Hold on, I don't think so though, because I feel like I get where both of you are coming from. I think I lean towards Nathan more though, because I feel like just because it's an option, just because it's available, those ads being personalized towards you doesn't mean that they should exist, and it doesn't mean that just because like they exist doesn't mean that they should have them against you guys. So I feel like I tend to agree more with Nathan that we shouldn't really have them.
And also, it leads to huge kind of privacy concerns in that if you have so much data stored in one area, it allows for it has a really high risk of your data being breached. And so even though companies might not necessarily be using your data in a bad way, the fact is that if they have millions of users or maybe even billions of users in one area, even though they might have some security measures over it, the fact that if your data gets leaked, then there's nothing like preventing that from happening because they have so much data.
I think you guys
there's nothing preventing that data from being misused or like using it in a harmful way against you.
Well, most of the data is like stuff that you allow there. You know, Google isn't putting up telescreens in your homes, forcing you to turn them on. You know, that's not what Google's doing. Google is just compiling the information that you give it. For example, most of the information that gets leaked online is like where you live, your age, your birthday, and your sexual orientation. Most of this stuff is stuff you have to personally reveal. Like data scrapers that don't even use, like not even from Google themselves.
But the thing is, that leads to a lot of windows for misuse. For example, we can look at how the government in 1984 kind of sways the truth or sways information to be in their favor. And the same thing goes for companies here, how they can use your data to kind of sway the overall understanding of what yourself is or like your ads or what you want. And they can kind of misuse your ideas and misuse your abilities.
I completely agree. I think that in our digital world today, being able to manage your online presence is crucial for your own personal freedom. So that wraps it up. That wraps it up today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to Sami and Nathan for joining us and being here with us as well.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure for having us.